Viewers, thank you for tuning into this video. I'm just here to talk about covert narcissistic abuse because I know a lot about a lot of things, but there's already a lot of information out there. The reason why I'm talking about covert is because I have so much experience with it. I have had a deeply covertly abusive family unit. And I'm not a psychologist. I can't help in that regard because even though I am very confident in my knowledge that I've taught myself, I'm here to share. I'm here to give information. There are things that I could tell you that would help you, but there's so many other ways of finding that information. I'm willing to give someone advice, but for the most part, I've gotten real help from psychiatrists, psychologists. But I was there the whole time. A lot of the work I did myself, and I don't think anyone knows your story better than you. So when it comes to getting help, I just want to let you know what my position can be for that. So, covert narc abuse, it's kind of like bewildering, cheap trickery that is also soul-crushing and soul-damaging. And, they say that a key feature to emotional and narc abuse is making you feel like you're crazy. Well, covert is that's like the main feature of covert narc abuse. So it's the reason why I want to talk about it is because it can happen in so many ways and in so many forms, and it can be such a mysterious thing. Because there are many things I figured out in my life. My 20s, I was basically a monk. Like, I would meditate and exercise, and that was like my life, pretty much. And I figured out a lot of mysterious things about life, but I did not, now that I've discovered what covert abuse is about, it's almost like I was wasting my time before, because the way I live my life now is completely different. Even though I had a bunch of skills that I built up. But, yeah, with covert abuse, they'll do things that are insidious, but it doesn't seem insidious. The hardest thing with covert abuse is, you hear stories about people who... I'm reading a book about child abuse, and I'm reading about people who got, terrible things happen. Like, their parents hit them and, put some real damage on them in all these ways that are visible and knowable. The only time my family ever hit me was when I was 5 with a belt, and it was like, I give you 4 whacks and that's it, and it's because you've done something bad. Now, I personally still don't believe in that form of parenting, but that is not really, the emotional abuse is, up here. Physically abusive, the belt thing is, kind of down here. So, and the reason why I say that is because you'll think, well, they gave me what I needed, and they didn't, really hit me a whole lot. So, from an emotional level, you'll, because of the nature of that form of abuse, you want to stay in that spot where you don't believe yourself or see yourself as an abusive person. But that's the thing. That's why they do it that way, so that you'll stay in denial about it. So remember that. They don't want you to... They don't want you to wake up to reality, to the light of day, especially the reality of how you feel, because they don't know how they feel. There's no self inside of behind the covert shell, is what I call it, or the narcissist shell, or there is no self there, and they know enough about life to lie to you, mislead you. They know that they're messed up inside, that they don't know what in God's green earth they could possibly do about that. but that you realizing what's going on and being in your truth would, number one, it's a bad thing for them for many reasons, but the main one is that they don't want you to be aware of what's going on with your feelings. They don't want you to know that. So, just because they know they're messed up, and they know that for you to be anything other than messed up would scare them, and it would really make things awkward for them. So they decide to destroy you instead. But they know that if they did it in all these obvious ways, that people would find out, you might speak up, this person might speak up. So they really are that abusive, but they're smart enough not to get caught, right? Think like a criminal. They can help. But the things that they did were boundary breaking without breaking laws. Like, when I was a teenager, I didn't have adolescence. My adolescence was taken from me. But my doors, you could see through them. You know, there was actually, but it was pretty, okay? There were like designs. There were doors to my bedroom had windows with designs on them. So I never had privacy. I wasn't allowed to have privacy. That's a boundary break, and that is abusive. Okay. My dad would go through my poetry, and there was a poem that I wrote that was about angst I was feeling about him, but it was all like, hidden. I didn't say it overtly in the poem, but I remember him holding that poem and saying, "What is this about?" I wasn't allowed to have my own feelings. I was also sent to boot camp where it wasn't regular boot camp. It was boot camp. It was at my real normal school. So I would show up at 5 a.m, go through my drills with my drill instructors, and then my head would be shaved, and I'd be wearing like black sweatpants and a black T-shirt with the name of the program on the T-shirt, and go to school with my peers. Basically alienated. Now that's systemic abuse, but the fact that my parents used the system to abuse me has a number of psychological effects. But you could say, well, Steve, maybe you were a juvenile delinquent. Maybe you were a bad... Well, I wasn't. I was a shy wallflower. I didn't do my laundry, and I could have been making better grades, but I don't think that that's a proportionate amount of discipline. Just to say, well, you don't want to do what we want you to do. We're going to throw you into the worst possible outcome within this system. And instead of them saying, well, maybe we could be better parents, maybe we could talk to them about it more. And my family did have talks. That was the most crazy-making part, was because they would say, all right, come to the office, we're all going to have a family discussion, right? So it seemed like a democracy. But due to all the other abusive things they were doing around that, by the time I got to the meeting, I really wouldn't say anything, because I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know how to form an argument against these older people who were making me... I didn't know what to say. You really are minimizing my self-image. Those words don't come to a 12, 13-year-old's head. And, especially in the face of his family that he's grown up in front of, that has done many traumatizing things. Like, that's... No 12-year-old can have that kind of wit. So, I mean, it's hard to... it's been hard to pin it down, and I really had to do a lot of research into proper child raising and what is appropriate. I've also done a lot of anger management work. I've done a lot of grief therapy to deal with all of this. But those are the kind of things that covert narc parents will do. They'll do things that definitely hurt you, but you don't know exactly... Number one, you're already under their spell. So, you don't know how you feel. You don't realize just how much this is damaging you. It's like being raped, and the rapist saying, just take it, it doesn't hurt. Like, it's kind of the same thing. I'm sorry, that was a very extreme metaphor, but it's like emotional violence. It is, and violence is, it can be, the definition of violence, I've heard it in many forms, it can be physically beating the crap out of something. But other forms of violence are perversion, twisting things, changing the context, making one thing into another. That's another form of violence. It's kind of like manipulation. That's what you'll receive with covert narc abuse. And to be honest, I was never physically, sexually violated. Not that I remember, and I've unblocked most of my blocked memories. But now looking back at it as an adult, as a 31-year-old adult, my dad saw me as a form of sexual competition, which created a lot of sexual confidence issues. Yeah. So this form of abuse, as a child, you're going to feel all of these things. The most important thing you can do is get in touch with how you actually feel, and you may have been I was disconnected from my feelings for 29 years. Like, a lot of things happened that should have made me cry, and I never did. My best friend killed himself. I didn't cry about that. There's something wrong there. But, yeah. So getting in touch with your feelings can help you. You may not feel like you have the right to have feelings. You may not feel like you have the right to take care of yourself, and you may not realize that you may not realize these beliefs, because these beliefs exist in the subconscious. Hear me out. I've transformed my conscious mind. My conscious mind used to be a way different person. And I've done a lot of work to change my conscious mind. I think I've changed some of my unconscious mind, but when it comes to brain activity, there's a lot going on with your emotions. Your emotions are tied to certain animal parts of your brain. Very emotions of survival. The strongest parts of you are connected to those parts of the brain. Now, when it comes to brain activity, the conscious mind, I know you can do a lot with your conscious mind. It is a useful tool in its own right, if you understand how it works. There's this much going on. In your subconscious, there's like this much going on. There's a lot more information being processed, and automatic perceptions and micro decision making actually occurs on a subconscious level. So you can do so much, but where the conscious mind is like more of a yang energy, kind of, it's overt and out there. Subconscious is the background, the back of the stage, in the back. And so if you had people around you who treated you wrong, judged you, bullied you, teased you, abused you, those impressions are in the background, especially if it is covert. It is nowhere in your crosshairs. It is in the background, and you may believe these things and not know or understand why. It took time to create those in your unconscious for you to adopt those beliefs, and you wouldn't have adopted them if you weren't being forced to. So, yeah, like that's kind of how the unconscious works. It's in the back, and if there are people around you, you're gonna pick up on that, even if they don't out directly say anything about their deep contempt or resentment for you, because I guarantee you my parents resent me a very good amount, but they never said it to me directly, so I had no conscious awareness. It was all picked up in my unconscious, and since those years of upbringing, if you want to call it that, the unconscious mind has been filtering my reality, filtering my perceptions, with the demons in the back whispering and, making those impressions out of life. Once I started grieving, I was able to get off that hamster wheel, get out of that neurotic drive to whatever. When I started crying, I almost felt like a deflated balloon. Like my ego had been this big inflated balloon, like, oh, look at me all my life. And then I cried and it was like, sorry, that was a weird body metaphor, but that's what happened. I felt like I had nothing to prove, and I'm feeling that way more these days because I started that grieving 2 years ago. I do get revved up sometimes. I like to have a healthy, strong ego, but sometimes I realize, like, this energy is just not worth it right now. I have nothing to prove. I'm not so much neurotically trying to escape certain feelings and certain thoughts about certain things. And those are parts of my external reality that could be seen as neutral, but because of the programming, I automatically want to look at those things in a certain way. And that's where you can be violent towards yourself, when your objective reality could be perceived in a way that is beneficial to you, but instead, because of the cognitive biases or generalizations, which is something the brain does all the time. In fact, a brain can't really... Two human brains almost have to generalize to have a conversation sometimes. So that's like normal. But sometimes the brain does it in the wrong ways without realizing it. Because the brain is powerful, but it can be redirected and controlled better when you learn how it works. So yeah, I think I've explained a lot of the nitty-gritty in a basic format about covert narc abuse and how it can affect you, and the things that covert narc parents can do to make you feel minimized, like you aren't special, like you don't matter. That's basically what they'll do without, if they're truly covert narc, NPD, terrible people, they'll do it just like that. They'll resent you and hate you completely, but never let you know it, because, well, there are many that's emotionally convenient for them in many ways to do it that way, because they're, number one, if they're like that, then they're probably already threatened by you. So to let you know that they hold any contempt in their heart is actually might intimidate them, because they're crazy. So even if you're their child and you're smaller and less powerful, clearly they're defending themselves in some way for some reason, but that doesn't matter. When you know they're that far gone, it depends on your position. I recommend just leaving it behind, but that's just me. You might have a reason to stay, that you might see some light for improvement, but if people prove themselves to be a certain degree of messed up, I don't have hope for that. I can't. I've got hope for myself. I know how damaged I am, but, well, with my recent therapy, I'm not worried at all. But where I was a couple years ago, I was a completely different person. And you wouldn't really notice it. But I do. So, it's a lot better for me. If you had covert narc abuse, I want to say sorry. And I want to give you a chance to say sorry to yourself. Not that it's your fault, but no one ever, I don't think, if you have covert narc abuse and you haven't really gotten over it, I don't think anyone has ever sided with you in that time where you were probably younger and helpless, and you had these people who were physically stronger and taller, in my case, way more financially and professionally powerful, and these people treated you horribly in ways that you did not deserve, and it was atrocious. And I think that's what helped me spark my empathy muscle, because I lost it. I lost my empathy. Once the abuse got so bad, I just stopped being able to feel. Once I started feeling bad for that part of me, that kid, that helpless child, and I was able to truly empathize with myself in that manner, my empathy has come back. So, don't be too empathic, because that can be bad. But, narcs of any form, by definition, lack empathy altogether. So, this is my longest video in a while. I feel like my energy is right for it. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was helpful to people who need help.